Odessa.
What an honor.
Thank you.
I feel like there's a piece of history sitting in front of me, which it is. So, firstly, let's get rid of the elephant in the room, and then we can... I have this precious book, Dylan and Me. And, we'll get to know you through the interview, but your first claim to fame is your friendship with Bobby Zimmerman,
Yes.
known as Bob Dylan for the world. What I'm saying is that, what I'm thinking is that, there's lots of big stars, but when you talk about Dylan, it's like Shakespeare, there's Beethoven, there's Bob Dylan. It's not like an average superstar. This is something that comes every generation. And you had the chance to be with him, to live with him. And you yourself have become an icon. and then we'll, of course, discuss why are you an icon of your own. How is it to grow up?
So, Bobby and I met at Herzl Camp in northern Wisconsin. It was a Zionist Jewish camp.
Mm-hmm.
We went there for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. It had a big influence on us.
Mm-hmm.
We kept coming back for many reasons, not one of which was co-educational. So it was great. And when we met, I was 11, Bobby was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And he was Bobby Zimmerman then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's unusual when your good friend, grows into become Bob Dylan, Nobel Prize winner and everything else. So yeah, and we grew.
You could see that he, as a friend, he was already talented.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. And what I really saw at that age was his determination to be successful in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
He would tell me, I'm going to be a rock and roll star. Okay, Bobby. But, he said it enough times.
We all say that, but
right.
he did it.
But he said it enough times that I could see that, he was going to make something happen.
Mm-hmm. But you lived your life.
Yeah.
He lived his.
Yes.
And you were there when he needed you.
Yes.
Which I think this is the real proof of friendship. You weren't there as, a fan. You were there when he needed.
No, I'm not a fan. I'm a friend.
Oh, you're a friend.
And we were there for each other. He was best man at my wedding.
Incredible. What's the downside of having such a famous friendship? Truth. This is real.
Yeah, well, I've never been asked that question. I can't say there's a downside to it. The one, maybe a downside is people are always asking me questions.
Does it bother you?
No, I know how to deal with that. Want tickets, want information.
Yeah.
I just blew them off.
No, because people. I'm of course, I grew up with Bob Dylan, but I'm on the verge. But for example, my father and Bob Dylan is a myth.
Yes.
It's an obsession. People were obsessed with him.
Yes, and so some people have tried to, get access or information through me, and I'm there, to protect. Never. I'm there to protect Bob, cover his back, and I make that very clear.
He trusted you.
Yeah, and
always.
I make that very clear.
You produced his tour also.
Yes, so there's a tour called the Rolling Thunder Review,
Right. Famous
which is a
tour.
very famous
Of
tour.
course.
And Bobby asked me to produce it, which was very unusual because I was in the fish business.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, in the seafood business. So he said to me, I have this idea for a tour. It's unconventional. Of course, most of the things he does is unconventional.
Thank God.
But yes, thank God. But this was unconventional for a tour. And he said, I ran it by a few major promoters when I was in New York. And they told me, oh, you can't do that. You're too big for that. You have to do the stadiums and the jets and all that stuff. He didn't want. He wanted to go to out-of-the-way places, small venues, and travel by road, and make it like a carnival, like an old-fashioned carnival. Like when the carnival comes to town, everybody's excited.
Love it.
And rather than just him performing, he wanted to bring all kinds of musical. And non-musical. We brought Allen Ginsberg, very famous poet, all kinds of people, and he brought in Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, Roger McGuinn, and then all the biggest stars used to come to the show, and he'd bring them up on stage. It was truly an old-fashioned review.
Luei, as a friend, Did you ever want yourself to be on that stage?
No, listen, I'm a fish guy, and I'm very happy with my, with my role. But I was happy for my friend that, he was able to be the person on stage. So I got Yiddish and Nakas from my friends
Fantastic.
being on stage and his success.
Did you ever see him composing a song or throwing down a line?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we'd go out, he'd always be jotting notes down and put it in his pocket. And, then eventually he'd put it all together in his very creative way and come out with some unbelievable song,
Unbelievable music. I was reading that you found yourself, for example, in your memories, sitting at the Passover Seder with Marlon Brando on one side.
Yes. So what happened there is a friend of mine called me one day, a lady who's an actress, and said, "Luei, Marlon Brando wants to meet you." This was a couple years after The Godfather.
Gosh.
I said, "Marlon Brando wants to meet me. Why would he want to meet me?" She said, "Well, he told me he wants to get his son Christian out of L.A. because he's traveling with a fast Hollywood crowd, and he's afraid, what the consequences will be." Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I knew anybody who had a business outside of L.A. that could take him away from here and hire him and be with normal people, And she said, "Well, I know this guy who has a seafood business in Alaska." And she said, "Marlon said, Alaska, that's perfect.
That's perfect.
Let's send him to Alaska." So he wants to meet you and talk to you about that. I said, "Okay." So she lived in Jack Nicholson's guest house. Mm-hmm. There was a compound, a gated compound. You could come down the driveway. Jack's house was on one side, Marlon's was on the other side. So they were
neighbors.
all neighbors. And she said, "Come to Jack's house," and she gave me a time and date, and you'll meet him. I said, "Okay." So I went there, and I met him, and he walks in, and he says to me, this is a poor imitation, but he said to me, "Well, I understand you have a business in Alaska." I said, "Yes." He says, "I want you to hire my son and take him up there." I said,
That's a good imitation.
Yeah, I said, "Marlon," at first we were introduced, we were talking over, and then he said that. I said, "Marlon, because you're asking me, I'm going to hire him. But that's just going to get him the job. In order to keep the job, he has to, it's a hard work.
Right.
He's going to have to really work hard and earn his own, keep up there." He says, "Don't worry, I'll make sure he works hard. I guarantee you he'll work hard." I said, "Okay, then he's got the job." I said, "But once he's up there, he's on his own. I can't help him." I said, "Once I turn him over to the managers, they're going to treat him like everybody else."
Right.
And he says, "I guarantee." And the kid was great.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
spent 3 years up there. We became close, and everybody liked him. But they gave him the shittiest jobs to start with.
Really?
Once they figured out who he was, they made him really prove himself. And he did it.
Poor guy.
Yeah, he did it.
How amazing or bad is Hollywood?
Well, I lived in L.A., and so I wasn't in the Hollywood scene, except I was exposed to it, through my relationship with Bob.
Of course.
But I never adopted any of those Hollywood values. I thank God I kept my good Minnesota values. They can take the boys out of Minnesota, but they can't take Minnesota out of the boys. So those are the values I've always lived by, and Bobby too.
At a certain point, your path differed, you and Bob. You found Jewish values, and he was on a different path.
Well, so what happened was, Bobby, through a friend of his, he started to study the New Testament. And, Bob's like a sponge. He digests everything, and he processes it. And, every Jew has a Jewish neshama that's always crying out for spirituality.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's just a question of which spirituality you find first.
So
because we never studied Torah. We didn't have that in our lives when we were growing up, though we had bar mitzvahs.
Yeah.
And so as it happened, that's what came. That's what came first. And he started to study it, And then I and him and I were living together at the time in a house in Brentwood, California that he had. He invited me to live with him, and he's studying the New Testament. Then I go back to Minnesota to see my mother on a trip, and I meet Rabbi Manis Friedman from Chabad, the guru, the great, amazing.
We're talking about a
pillar. And the short version is I studied with him for 3 weeks, and I was having questions about what the deeper meaning of life was, and I was searching for somebody.
Yeah.
And when I met him, he gave me answers that were amazing. The best way to describe my initial meeting with Rabbi Friedman was I had good questions, he had great answers, and they blew me away. They blew me away. And so the short version is, after studying with him, he said to me, now that you've learned all this knowledge, he said, if you look in the mirror, you may think you look the same, but inside you can't be the same person. Nice. I said, you're right. He said, what are you going to do about it? I said, do about it? I haven't thought about that. So he says to me, there's 613 commandments. I said, Rabbi, stop. You got to know who you're talking to. I grew up in Duluth in a basically non-Jewish environment.
Right.
You know, I never studied Torah. The only reason I know about the 10 Commandments is because of the movie. And I can't even keep all of those. And so he just kind of sat there for a minute, stroking his beard, didn't say a word. And then he says to me, there's 5 commandments. If you keep these 5 commandments, it'll change your whole relationship with Hashem. And when I met you, you said you knew you were writing up a big tab with Hashem for all your good fortune. This is a way that you can start to pay it back. So he explains them to me, and on multiple levels. And then I pondered it for about a minute, and then I said, okay, I'm going to do it.
Wow.
And that was it, cold turkey.
And you just...
That was it, never looked back. I just became...
Did he bring you to the Rebbe?
Yes.
This is you with the Rebbe?
Yes. Him and Rabbi Feller from Minnesota, who he worked with, they brought me to the Rebbe.
They never managed... I know Bob went to the Rebbe.
No, Bob went to the Rebbe.
But not with you.
Not with me. But they brought him.
He went in disguise. Nobody
could
see him.
Wears his hoodies. But, what happened was, so then I come back, and I'm living in the house with Bob, and I said to Bob.
And he's learning the New Testament.
Yeah. So I said, Bob, by the way, I became observant. He said, what? I said, yeah, I'm Orthodox. He said, what? I said, I keep kosher, I keep Shabbos, I study Torah. He was like, wow, how did that happen? So I kind of explained it to him. And so what happened is he'd be in one part of the house studying the New Testament. Yeah. I'd be in the other side of the house.
Putting on tefillin.
And studying the Torah, And then we'd meet in the kitchen in the afternoon where we'd, eat and drink and talk and kind of try and influence each other. Yeah. And it became obvious to me that he knew a lot more about what he had been studying already for about 8 months. Mm-hmm. So he knew a lot more about what he was studying than I knew Torah at that point. Mm-hmm. That's changed now. So I went back to my room that night. I called Manas, and I said, Manas, I didn't tell him who it was. I said, I live with a Jewish friend who's studying the New Testament. I can't really refute the things that he says in a meaningful way. I don't know enough yet. But if I get you a ticket, will you come out here and meet with him? Really? He said, sure, just let me know when. Wow. So I said, okay, I'll get back to you. So the next day when we were in the kitchen, I said to Bobby, my rabbi's going to be here next week. Would you like to meet him? He said, sure, bring him to the house. I said, okay. So I called Manas, and we arranged the day next week. I got him a ticket, picked him up at the airport, brought him to the house, and they got along great. Bobby. Was he shocked when he... Well, I told him on the ride into the... No, he wasn't, because he's not that guy. The only person in the world that ever impresses him is the Rebbe. Everybody else is in another category. True. But he knew who he was, and he respected who he is and his accomplishments and all that. So I said, just before we got there, by the way, my friend is Bob. Okay, and that started the path where Bobby started to study Torah. So you understood that. Oh yeah, yeah, and thanks to you. Well, thanks to Hashem and the Rebbe and Chabad, and we used to go to 770 for bringings. Now we don't speak Yiddish, right? And he would speak in Yiddish. there'd be 3,000 people there.
Right.
But the kedusha, the
Right.
right, it would penetrate. You
Yeah.
could tell you're with somebody,
Out of this world.
Yeah, out of this world.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to want to stand there for 3 hours, even though we couldn't understand the words. And a cute story. We went one time with our friend Larry Keegan, who I write about in the book, who we also met at camp, and we stayed friends, his entire life. And at that point, he was a quadriplegic in a wheelchair from a diving accident. And so he came with, and I'm standing on one side of Larry, and Bobby's on the other side in the wheelchair. The Rebbe gets up, pours some mashka in his cup, and gives a l'chaim right to Larry. Looks right in his eyes. It was obvious to everybody in the room. It was to Larry.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That's
And everybody could see that. So after that, Bobby says to me, I think the Rebbe really likes Larry. I said, yeah, it's obvious he does. I said, the Rebbe doesn't look at the material side of people.
Right.
He looks inside of them for, their spirituality. So Bobby says to me, I think we better work on our spirituality. I said, you're right. And we did.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
You really did.
Yeah, we grew.
You went on to LA and you became a big supporter of Chabad of
Yes.
Pacific Palisades,
Yes.
which is incredible. You met the famous Schwartzy.
Oh, yeah, Schwartzy, the best.
Rabbi Schwartzy also helped you. And now, the most important part, you moved to Israel.
Yes, thank
You
God.
made Aliyah.
Yes, I bought a one-way ticket,
Incredible.
and
How old are you, Luei?
I'm 82.
Incredible.
Yeah, but this is something I wanted to do for a long time. But there's always excuses and there's always reasons and blah blah blah. And finally, I just said, enough of this crap. I'm coming, and I'm here. I'm thrilled to be here.
You settled in Jerusalem. You have
Yes.
grandchildren, grandchildren,
Yes.
and you're living the real life now.
I'm
This is
living-
the real life.
This is the real deal.
After all you've been through, this is what it counts.
Somebody said to me when I told them I was moving to Israel, they said, well, you've had such a good life in America, and,
Right.
and you've done these amazing things and accomplished this and that. I said, I'll tell you what, the best is yet to come.
Amazing.
And I feel that way.
Fantastic.
I
Luei, you
feel-
give me so much positivity,
Thank you.
so much energy, and you give out positive vibes, like
Thank
you are an icon yourself. What you have done and what you're still doing, it's amazing.
I'm working on a project. I had this idea before I came here, is I wanted to bring survivors and people who were affected by the war to America. I went to a Jewish camp for 5 years. The Jewish camps in America are amazing.
Yeah,
and,
amazing.
and so I wanted to secure a camp, a Jewish camp, and bring widows, orphans, wounded IDF, displaced people to come to a camp so they could have a
Great time.
Yeah, great
This is
time.
an amazing idea.
And I also have people there that can deal with the emotional side of what they
course.
have experienced and are experiencing.
Sure.
And so I get here. I don't have a camp yet. I had one lined up and it fell through before I came here. And it shows you how Hashem runs the world.
Yeah.
I'm introduced to this brother of one of 10 brothers, and I told him about my idea. And he said, that's a great idea. He said, you should meet my brother. Two of my brothers bought a 100-acre camp outside of Orlando.
Wow.
You should talk to them about it.
You're kidding
And
me.
that's what happened. And I'm partnering with them, the Feeling Brothers, and we're going to bring these people to this camp outside Orlando, which is close to Disney World and Universal.
It's
we can do.
amazing.
Yeah. And so that's, so when you want to do something good, Hashem makes it happen.
And Luei, please, when it's ready, come back and tell us about this camp.
Okay.
We're gonna have so many, requests. I don't know. I could stay here for 10 hours. You're amazing. I feel old next to you because you're such youth and you look amazing. Do you still have Bob Dylan in your phone?
Yes, I do. But you see who I brought with?
Oh, what is this belt?
So this belt belonged to Rav Yitzhak Kaduri,
Kaduri.
right, who's the famous Kabbalist,
Of course.
who died at 107, was the leading Kabbalist in the world, a tzaddik,
Of course.
And the short version is he came to L.A. To raise money for his yeshiva in 1990. I met him. and he stood up. He was wearing this for years. This is like a gartel, and took it off and gave it to me. And he was known, among many other things, to give brackets to women who couldn't, who were told they couldn't have children by doctors and they weren't successful, and they would conceive. So once I realized, the power of this, I started to invite women in LA to come and wear it, and many of them
had children.
Yes.
So now you're in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I brought it with
women
me.
who need to.
Yes, women who
have children.
They can contact you, and you can
For sure.
and you can
For sure.
set it up.
So for the women who want to have children, there's Luei. You can contact me. Through ARUTZ SHEVA. I'll give you the how to get to Luei. And for the book, Dylan and Me, I can't wait. It's going to be next to my bed. I can't wait to read it. And Luei, you're amazing.
Thank you, dear.
So much goodness, so much love, Mehmet.
Well, I came home, so thank
Yeah,
God.
you really did. Thank you for everything. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Hadassah.
Well, I hope you were inspired today, because I was for sure. Dylan and Me. It's in stores everywhere. And take care.